Hi, and welcome back to Heart and Health Wellness. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Welch. And if you are new here, this is a podcast all about making sure that you are nurturing and paying attention to your biopsychosocial, spiritual health and wellness. So if you missed last week's episode, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that. I give a good introduction to what biopsychosocial, spiritual health and wellness is, really divided each of those domains up, gave a good kind of foundation for what we're doing with this podcast. And then we talked about how you can use monthly check-ins to keep yourself on track with your goals, to make sure that you are nurturing your biopsychosocial spiritual wellness. And we're going to break down what you should be looking at during your weekly reflection time to make sure that you are staying on track and taking care of yourself in the best way possible. So just a reminder, I am your host, Dr. Melissa Welch. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been practicing for the last 10 years, helping individuals, couples, and families achieve wellness, making sure that their life is that they're living their lives in alignment with their values. And I really want this space to be an extension of what you would get with me in a therapy room. This podcast is something that I've been excited to do for a very long time. And so we're keeping it really casual and simple, but I thought it would be best to go ahead and get started and just jump right in so that it can be a resource that's helpful to you. And so I encourage you to just kind of be relaxed and allow yourself to be open and reflective during this time that we spend together. It'll be about maybe 20 or 30 minutes together, so not too much time, but I commend you for investing in yourself and listening, and I hope that you'll be able to take something away from today that you can start implementing and leading a more healthy, fulfilling life. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to dive into today. So last week, like I said, we broke down what it looks like to attend to your biopsychosocial spiritual health and your goals in a monthly reflection. But today we're going to talk about weekly reflections. And the reason that doing a weekly reflection is important is because if you're not slowing down to pause and reflect, we tend to just go, and mindlessly go through each day without actually thinking if we are working toward our goals or not. And so it's nice to just break it down into these different time periods, whether it's monthly, weekly, or daily, which we'll get more into next week, to make sure that you are on track. It's an opportunity to be mindful about what you're doing and how you're living so that you can make sure that you are living out the way that you want to and can feel good about what you're doing. So for me personally, I've experienced the power of weekly check-ins and reflection. I usually try to do this on a Sunday or really any time that I have just by myself. I'm thinking about how I don't always have a lot of time by myself because I have a toddler, and so I'm very busy in that way. But usually a Sunday evening when I'm winding down, getting ready for the next week, I'm able to think through these different prompts that I'm going to share with you today. And I've seen how it's helped me, especially in the last several months where I've been more rigid about it, to make sure that I'm on track, to keep me going, to give me that momentum and that inspiration, that motivation to keep going. Even when things maybe aren't happening when I want them to, it's still helping me to see that I'm making progress toward those goals. I hope that makes sense. So I've seen that work out well for me doing a weekly check-in, especially in the last couple months when I've been very intentional about it. But I've also seen how this weekly style of checking in is helpful with my clients, my patients that I see in therapy. Traditional therapy often meets weekly. And especially when you're in the midst of something that's really difficult and you need someone to hold you accountable, or you need someone to help you push on the brakes and hit pause to sit and reflect, doing that weekly and having someone hold you accountable can be really, really helpful in getting you to move into that correct direction, that better direction. While I think eventually you might get to a point where you don't feel like you need to sit down and do this very rigidly, I think even doing something in a relaxed format, or what's the word I'm looking for, just very informally, doing something each week can be really helpful. So I think there's a lot of value in doing it weekly. I've seen it with myself and I've seen it with others that I've worked with, that weekly format is a good one to have. So I want to point out something that I don't think I got into last week in the first episode, and that is to talk about one of the verses that has stuck with me for years, and that's Proverbs 15:30. And I'm going to release a mini episode at some point where I talk about the history of how I found this verse and why it stuck with me. But the verse is, "A cheerful look brings joy to the heart. Good news brings good health." And I feel like that verse just fits perfectly with what we are doing here in this podcast of making sure that, you have something to bring a smile to your face that encourages you to keep going even when it's tough, but also to give yourself good news, to be motivating yourself to keep you going, and that makes for good health. So how we talk to ourselves is so incredibly important. So if we're giving ourselves good information, we're fueling our body with good news, not weighing ourselves down with all of the bad stuff, it's going to influence our health, our biopsychosocial spiritual health. So it's really important to think about. So that's how I bring that up. If we're doing a weekly check-in, we want to make sure that what we're doing in that weekly check-in is adding to this, contributing to that process, and is helpful to us. Again, if you're just going through the motions day to day and you skip this opportunity to be feeding yourself something really good, you might miss out on that. Okay. So that's why I bring that up. I want to talk about a framework that we can use for the biopsychosocial spiritual health to split up how we're going to be doing that check-in with ourselves. All right. Okay. So let's talk about what you should be covering when you do your weekly overview. So the first thing that I want you to do is identify your top 3 priorities for the week. What are the 3 things that you have to get done this week in order to feel like you are headed in the right direction? The next thing that I want you to do is talk about 3 wins that you had from the previous week. So the reason that I organized it this way is I want you to identify what needs to be done. And then I want you to encourage yourself by saying, I know I can do this because this is what I achieved last week. So I know that this is possible because I've seen that I'm able to stick to my goals, or I've seen that I'm able to make progress even when it's really hard. So first do your top 3 priorities, then do your 3 wins from the past week. Then I want you to identify, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge, maybe 1 or 2 challenges or obstacles that you might face this week that would make it difficult for you to achieve those top priorities that you identified. And then you can start thinking about kind of how you could work around those obstacles, plan for them, know that they're coming so that you can achieve your goals, even though those things might still happen, right? We're going to face hard times in life. We're going to face challenges. We know that they are there. It's our job to make sure that we continue to keep ourselves going, even when those challenges happen. Okay. The next thing that I want you to do is to identify some opportunities for improvement based on what you observed in yourself, in your behavior, in your wellness in the past week. What are some things that you can do, some adjustments that you can make that will make things just a little bit better? I'm not talking about huge improvements here. I'm talking about something little that you can do. If you snoozed your alarm 3 times every time it went off last week, and your goal is to get up at a certain time every day so that you have a morning routine or so that you work out or whatever it might be, maybe your goal this week is to not allow yourself to snooze more than 2 times. Okay, that's the kind of incremental, small change that I'm talking about. There is power in saying, I'm never going to hit the snooze button again. And for some people that works. But if it's just something small, instead of 3 times this week, I'm going to do it 2 times, no more than 2 times. That is fine. Okay, if your goal is to limit how much sweet tea or soda you are drinking, and so normally you're someone who drinks like a big 32-ounce soda or sweet tea, and this week you're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut it out completely. Go for it. If you want to try and cut it out completely, that's fabulous. But I think it's probably more realistic to say, I'm going to just do, the 24 ounce or the 12 ounce instead of the big 32 ounces. So small changes that are going to lead to big results down the road. Okay. So, but what are those opportunities for improvement that you have to make next week? Be very specific with yourself. Be very honest with yourself about adjustments that you need to make. The next thing that I want you to do is to think about if you attended to your whole person health and wellness. So break it down into the bio, the psycho, the social, and the spiritual domains that we talked about last week. Again, if you have not listened to that episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to it this week. But I want you to break these down and think about maybe some of these different questions. So for the physical health domain, the biological, ask yourself questions like this. Am I sleeping well? What does that actually mean? How many hours of sleep are you getting? What time are you going to bed? What time are you winding down for bed? Okay. Are you eating well? Are you giving yourself nutritious foods? Are you just eating junk and processed foods? Are you giving yourself vegetables? Are you eating fruits? Like, what are you putting into your body? If you're expecting something good, but you're putting in junk, that's going to be hard to achieve, right? And then ask yourself, am I moving my body? Am I going for a walk? Am I just stretching? You don't have to leave your house. You can literally do this when you get out of bed or get into bed at night. Just stretch your body a little bit, move your body. Okay, for the psychological domain, which is your mental and emotional health, I want you to ask yourself, how am I feeling emotionally? What thoughts are dominating my mind? And again, we talked about how paying attention to what thoughts are in our brain or how is going to be directly related to what kind of life we're living, right? And how we're doing, what we're able to achieve and accomplish and all that. Those thoughts are really important. So how am I feeling emotionally? What feelings come up? Remember, it's okay to be feeling more than one emotion at once. It's not black or white. You can be feeling encouraged and grieving. You can be feeling angry and hopeful. It's okay to have multiple emotions at the same time. So ask yourself, how am I feeling emotionally and what thoughts are dominating my mind? Okay, then I want you to think about your social domain, which is your relationships and your community. Ask yourself, have I connected with loved ones this week? Have I talked to anybody on the phone? Have I responded to text messages? Have I sent text messages? Have I found an opportunity to share how I'm doing with somebody else, or am I holding it all in and trying to do this on my own? We are created for connection, and we are created to be relying on each other in a healthy way to an extent. It's okay to be seeking support from others. For those of you who need to hear that, it is okay to seek support from others. You do not have to do all of this on your own. We are designed for connection, and it is not appropriate to expect that you should be able to do all of this on your own. Okay? So reach out to loved ones. Receive love from friends when they're giving it to you, reaching out to you. It needs to go both ways. And ask yourself, am I feeling supported? And if you're not feeling supported, what could you be doing to get that support that you need in this coming week? All right. And then for the fourth domain, for spiritual health, which is not just religion, but also just kind of faith in general and your purpose and meaning in life, ask yourself, have I nurtured my faith and my practice? Have I been engaging in my quiet time? Have I been engaging in prayer? Have I been reading my holy text? What is it that you need to be doing to feel good about living in alignment with that value of a sense of purpose and meaning? And do I feel like I'm living in alignment with my values, whatever those values might be, whether it's related to a faith or religion or just something else, like family time or what you're doing with work, whatever that might be. Do I feel like I'm living in alignment with my values? So that spiritual part is absolutely crucial as well. So all four things need to be attended to, right? So once you've asked yourself those questions, I want you to rate each of those areas on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being not good at all. We really failed this week, and 5 being totally awesome. I nailed it. Everything was great. Wouldn't change a thing next week. Okay. So rate each area, bio, psycho, social, and spiritual, on that scale from 1 to 5. All right. And then the last thing I want you to do is just write some encouraging notes to yourself, whether that's a motivational quote or an affirmation that you want to be repeating throughout the week, but just something that's going to be encouraging and uplifting for yourself. I want you to do that. All right. So those are the things that I want you to cover in your weekly reflection time when you're doing that. And I would encourage you to try to make that into a ritual. Okay. So whether that's doing it on the same day each week or having a space where you do that. I have a chair in the corner of my room where I like to sit and do my reading and do my reflection. So whatever that is, make it a ritual so it's a habit and a routine that you're doing consistently. Also, I'm encouraging you to walk through all of these things, and I'm going to provide you with a free template to be able to do this. So I've kind of built it out into a PDF that you can download for free. You can find that in the show notes. So you can do it sitting down and writing, but there's other ways to do this, right? So you can just journal it out if you want to. You can talk it out to yourself in a voice memo on your phone. You could spend this time in prayer or just kind of reflection, just kind of thinking through it. That would be appropriate. You could go for a walk and do kind of a mindful walk every week where you're thinking through these things. I think it's helpful when you're just getting started to have something like a paper, at least on your tablet or something that you're looking at with that PDF, to be able to get used to that rhythm and doing all of the steps, do each of the steps individually. But once you really got that down, if you want to go for a walk and think through all of this, you certainly can do that too. The purpose is not to do it just right or do it a certain way, but to be doing it consistently and regularly so that it's a part of your routine and a part of your practice when you're working towards goals and just making sure that you're wanting to take care of yourself. The other thing that I want to encourage you to do with your weekly reflections is to include some kind of accountability with this. So whether that's talking to a friend, a spouse, a family member, somebody who knows that you're doing this regularly, who can say, hey, did you do your reflection time? Or, hey, what were some of the key takeaways from your reflection time this week? Making sure that you are talking to at least one other person who can hold you accountable to this process to make sure that actually happens. Okay, so I want to spend this last little bit of time doing a guided self-reflection exercise that you can either listen to on its own later, or you can go ahead and do this now. If you're driving, maybe wait till later. If you're sitting, that would be a good thing. Now would be a good time to do it, maybe. But this will take about 7 or 10 minutes, okay? And then we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and find a place where you're comfortable to sit and just spend a few moments taking some deep breaths in and focus your thoughts so that you can be fully present. If you're multitasking or trying to do something else right now, now would be a good time to put that on pause and just center yourself to focus on this for right now. We're going to start with doing a quick body scan from head to toe. So I want you to think about how your body feels today. Notice if you're feeling tense, tired, energized. Notice if you've been eating foods that nourish your body today. Are you getting enough sleep and movement? I want you to take this moment to just identify one small action to care for your body this week. Next, we're going to reflect on your emotional and mental health. What emotions have been present this week? Have you been feeling overwhelmed, joyful, anxious, or calm? Maybe all of the above. What thoughts have been repeating in your mind? I want you to notice patterns without judgment and consider one way to support your emotional well-being this week. Next, we're going to think about the social connections that you've been taking care of. Ask yourself, who have I connected with this week? And do I feel supported, or am I isolating myself? Have I been intentional in my relationships? And then I want you to think about maybe one friend or family member or mentor that you could contact this week. And finally, let's do our spiritual check-in. Have you made time for your faith or your personal growth? Do you feel aligned with your purpose? And I want you to finish with just a moment of prayer, or maybe just gratitude for some things that are going really well in your life. And then set an intention for the week. Maybe come up with a mantra that you can repeat to yourself over the next several days. to make sure you're attending to that. Now take one more deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, and commit to one small, meaningful action that you can take in the coming week. I want to encourage you that you're definitely taking powerful steps towards your well-being and showing up for yourself. And I commend you for engaging in this practice, especially if it's not something that you're used to doing. All right, and now back to the regular stuff that we've been talking about. Again, the importance here is that you are checking in with yourself and engaging in a regular weekly reflection time to make sure that you are attending to biopsychosocial and spiritual wellness with yourself and staying on track with your goals. Okay, you can get that free PDF that I talked about that provides this outline for a weekly reflection in the link that's in the show notes down below. So check that out if you want that. Also, if you have not listened to last week's episode, make sure you go do that. And then if you want to hear about how to break down the daily reflection process, tune in next week because that's what we'll be talking about there. And it's going to be a little bit different than the monthly or weekly. It's hard to cover all of it in a day. That's a real structured way, right? But just really giving you something that's going to be easy to remember so that you can walk through it all and a simplified process for daily check-ins. So we'll be talking about that next week. Also, I want you to spend some time when you finish listening to this podcast to just kind of think about what that thing was that you told yourself you would do this week, that small change that you would make. Maybe there's one or two things that came up for you while you were listening today, and think about how you're actually going to make that happen and who you need to tell to hold you accountable to make sure that happens, okay? If you are like me, it does not matter if you promise yourself to do it. You need to tell somebody else about it so that it's going to happen. That is how this podcast got started, is because I shared it with other people who are holding me accountable. So make sure that if you're someone who is like me in that way, that you're sharing it with somebody else to hold yourself accountable to that. And then I also want to add, if you found anything helpful in this episode today, please do two different things. One, please leave a review on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this. If you give me a positive review, it really helps me grow the podcast and get it out to other people. The second thing is that I would ask that you share it with at least one other person. Send them the link, say, hey, I thought this was really helpful. I think you would like it too. Let me know what your thoughts are. And then also just kind of a bonus, leave your thoughts. Let me know what stuck with you, what stood out to you in the comments so we can have that conversation. I really want this to be a collaborative process because I want it to be something that's helpful to you. That is why I started this. So let me know in the comments what you want to hear more about, what stood out to you so I can continue to make this something that is helpful to you. Also, as a teaser, I am planning on doing a first quarter check-in on March 28th. So last week we talked about how the year split down into quarters. So at the end of March, the end of the first quarter, we're going to do a check-in where it'll be a live webinar where we're all together. I will probably limit this to 10 to 20 spots. We'll see how much interest there is. But I want it to be a place where we can actually have dialogue to talk about what's going well for you, how you can make it better. So this will be an opportunity to talk with me one-on-one about how to really get yourself aligned with your values and making sure that you're making good progress toward your yearly goals. So if that is something that's interesting to you, mark it on your calendar for Friday, March 28th. Will probably be a lunchtime thing, but more details to come on that. Alrighty, I think that is all for today. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have this going finally, and I'm excited that you're here and a part of it, and I will talk to y'all soon. Until next time, make sure you're taking care of yourself, and I will see y'all next week.